All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's currently 1:07 p.m. So I'd like to say hi to all of the students who will be watching this, currently watching this. Joining us today is Mr. Anto Umali. He is a graduate of the Bachelor's BS in Computer Science program here at Ateneo University. He graduated in 2013. Anto, welcome. Thanks for joining us. How are you today?
It's nice to be here. Feeling good. A bit,
Yeah.
what do you say? Getting a bit of cabin fever na lang, but
Oh,
because of the
yeah.
quarantine. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I understand. I know a lot of people are probably feeling that way. How are you?
Yeah.
How are you trying to alleviate the cabin fever? Though, what are the things that you the things that you do to help you stay sane in these times?
Well, I've always been a bit of a homebody, so it's not
Yeah.
a lot naman.
Yeah.
It's just that I really can't go outside and go to the gym or like do a run.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I try to exercise here at home, and so far
Yeah.
I've ended up volunteering for a bunch of stuff. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but yeah, that's how I
Yeah. Just to make sure that you don't get too bored, right?
yeah. You can't just watch Netflix all the time. It's useless.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe just half the day and half of it with more productive stuff.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. So Anto is here with us today to share with us his experience, his professional experience, and his experience being a student in the Ateneo, to give our prospective students some advice and some insight on as they try to decide this next step in their lives. So Anto, I guess we can start with if you could tell us a bit about your professional life, your work.
Okay, so currently I'm doing research and development for a startup called Augmented Intelligence Pros Inc. We basically do machine learning solutions for BPO companies. So there, I do a mishmash of software development, researching new and cutting edge methods to increase productivity, optimizing systems, databases, and all these things that come with working for a startup. So
Yeah.
there's not really one set role currently right now. It's like wherever I'm needed, that's
Yeah.
where I go. But it's mostly research and algorithms and numerical optimization and stuff. So there, that's what I'm currently doing. But before that, I was in EY Philippines, formerly known as Ernst and Young.
Okay.
So I was there for about a year. Yeah, I worked in cybersecurity and robotics process automation. And then before that, I was a lecturer and a project assistant there at the Ateneo de Manila University in the Ateneo Laboratory for Learning Sciences. I initially was only a lecturer for computer graphics, but then ended up becoming one also for AMC, Applied Math and Computer Science 125, I think. Or was it 124? I'm not sure anymore. And then I also helped with the VR AR game there. Prior to that, I came from the US, just finishing my master's in WPI, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, where I had a master's in computer science, specializing in humanoid robotics and human robot interaction. I was also a teaching assistant and a research assistant at the Autonomous Robotics Collaboration Laboratory under my thesis advisor, Professor Dimitri Berenson. My thesis was accepted into the International Conference for Robotics and Automation 2017, which was held in Singapore. We used a very cheap, so and so, somewhere north of 20,000 US dollars, cheap, humanoid robot to help remove PPE, personal protective equipment, from workers who were currently in Africa for the Ebola outbreak. So, how timely! It was spurred on by the Ebola outbreak, and there was
Yeah.
an issue with people, trying to get their PPE off without getting the other guy
Yeah.
who's helping them infected. So we
Yeah.
decided it's like, oh, maybe we can use the robots for that, and then that's the project I was working on for a year and a half. And then prior to that, my first job was as a game developer in Skillshot Labs, the now defunct Skillshot Labs, which is a Japanese startup here in the Philippines making mobile games. So
Yeah.
there.
that's a very colorful professional life so far,
Yeah,
right?
I've been all over the place.
Yeah. What would you say though if you were to if we were to sort of like go back in time? Because now definitely you have this whole breadth of knowledge and all of this experience. Um, what would the younger you would have said? Like for instance, if the younger you could listen to all of the things you were saying right now, do you think that younger you would have been surprised? Would have been
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Because I always grew up with this notion that people would always stay in one company place
yeah,
for a long period of time, just like what my parents did, what our parents did. So
yeah,
they would usually stay around for like 5, 10, 15 years. And then I'd personally be surprised with the amount of jumping I did,
yeah,
and the amount of, you could say, erratic decision making.
yeah,
Um, but I guess back then, my younger self would not have known how dynamic the job landscape would be
yeah,
when he got older, and how the demands really shift, and
yeah,
how being in CS means that you could actually jump from place to place much easier than if you were in
yeah,
another field.
yeah.
So there.
Yeah, because it essentially can be something that's integrated to any field, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Every field needs a
yeah.
current well, these
And
days
I
every field needs a programmer, a
yeah,
algorithmist.
yeah,
Everyone's going, you know, tech
yeah,
teching up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Were you sure though when you were trying to apply for college, or was it just, I hear CS is good, I'll just enroll here?
Okay, that's a funny story because originally what I put on my first choice was BS Physics with
Okay.
computer systems engineering.
Yeah.
But then after that was like when I was in late third year high school.
Okay.
But then after a bit of researching, I found that in the like 5 to 10 years after I graduated, CS graduates would be highly in demand.
Yeah.
And looking back then, it's like I don't want to be hard pressed looking for a job when I graduate. So I
Yeah.
swapped the two. CS was actually my second choice. So I
Yeah.
swapped the two, and CS became my first choice. Physics became my second choice.
Yeah.
And then that was for the Ateneo. I only applied for two colleges, by the way. The other one was UP.
Yeah.
And then in UP, CS was also my second choice. My first was architecture. So
Okay.
kind of different from the other
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
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 So there, I wasn't actually as sure, and
Yeah.
personally speaking, the decision was also spurred on by market demand. If you,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it was equal parts passion and
Yeah.
being practical.
But no regrets so far.
No, 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 none.
Yeah, that's good. But what made you decide to choose Ateneo?
So what made me decide to choose Ateneo was, one, there was a prospect of because physics was my second choice. I
Yeah.
said, well, maybe if I get into the Ateneo, they let me do a double major.
Yeah.
And I actually tried doing that, but I would have ended up spending 6 years. So I was like, no. Um, Also, I I was part of the ultimate frisbee team
Yeah.
in high school back then,
Oh, yeah.
and it was our batch who started the ultimate frisbee org in
Oh,
Ateneo High School. And we sort of wanted to do the same for college. So we
yeah.
was like, oh, we started in high school. Why can't we do it in college? And it's like, let's
Yeah.
make this a thing.
Yeah.
So, and finally, my older brother was in the Ateneo
Yeah.
college, and he was doing judo at that time. It was like,
Yeah.
well, if I want to try something new, I could always just go on and let him help me try something else. So
Yeah.
it was a mix of one reason, one third academics and two thirds extracurricular activities, because
Yeah.
I knew that it would be easier
Yeah.
to get started on multiple extracurricular activities inside Ateneo,
Yeah.
and I really wanted a life outside of, like,
Yeah.
just probably programming and other
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Was there a point where you felt like was there a point in your life as a student where you felt like everything fell into place and you said, all right, I made the right decision. I made the right decision of coming into Ateneo.
Yeah, there was, I think, in fourth year,
Yeah.
when I was doing my thesis already, and then I was under Ma'am Rodrigo,
Yes.
and she was just the most supportive advisor ever. And it was the thesis itself was not very easy. The work wasn't very
Yeah.
easy, but sort of going through the entire process, you could really feel the amount of support that
Yeah.
was given. And it wasn't like the spoon feeding sort of babying sort of support, but just the right amount of support. And then we're being guided and directed into the proper processes and the proper procedures. And I thought it was like maybe I did make the right choice because um, my thesis was presented in the Mine Museum. My undergraduate thesis was
Oh,
presented in the Mine
nice.
Museum.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it won like the DISCS Best Innovation Thesis, and
Yeah.
I'm really thankful for the people who helped me achieve that, because I think if I went to any other school, I wouldn't have had as much support, because my thesis at that time was really like, why are you doing this? Um, so maybe I could give a background on
Yeah.
to what my project was. So we basically had a toy robotic hand, and Ma'am Didith just got this new toy. It was a brain computer interface with three electrodes that would monitor
Yeah.
alpha, beta, and theta waves. And then
Yes.
we said, like, why can't we use that to control that?
Yeah.
And no one has really done anything sort of like that
Yeah.
um, in the Philippines, I think,
Yeah.
even in the Ateneo. It's like,
Yeah.
and no one was really sure of what that entailed, because no one really does robotics here, especially back
Yeah.
in 2013.
Yeah.
And then back then I could really feel like even if the professors weren't really sure of where this project was heading, I still got like the support I needed and
Yeah.
the encouragement I needed.
Yeah. Tell us a bit more about how you were as a student. So aside from just being a computer science major, what were the other things that you were also doing?
Okay, so I'm
Yeah.
glad you didn't ask me about my approach to studying and stuff like that. Okay, I was a huge. Okay, so
Yeah.
I entered computer science
Yeah.
mostly because I wanted to make games. Like, I
Yeah.
really wanted to make games.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that during my first few years, 2 years in that, I was mostly either in school,
Yeah.
playing basketball, or at a computer shop playing games. So that was mostly how I was like early on. And um, I really tried not to be super grade conscious.
Yeah.
I mostly focused on my majors, and then after I got work done in those, I would proceed to do other stuff. I wasn't really into orgs, so I tried being into orgs. It wasn't for me. It's like
Yeah.
I was in the programming varsity,
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
spurred on by Mom Didith and Mom Jess.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was what took up my co-curricular time.
Yeah.
That was my academic endeavor outside of school, and then I was also, I think, later on in first year, and then throughout second year, and then early in third year, I was training with the Ateneo judo team with my brother. So I initially took that as a PE, and then I eventually got hooked, and then started doing that. So that those two endeavors took up most of my time outside of school, and then whatever free time I had, I would be playing basketball or playing computer games. Um, but in terms of other stuff like volunteer work or org work, not much really.
Yeah.
I wish I could have done more because
Yeah.
you know make better use of my time. But I was a kid, so
Yeah.
there, yeah.
Yeah.
And then later on, third year, I decided to go on junior term abroad. So that kind of changed a lot of things. Yeah, because the SEMs got really crammed.
Yeah.
I didn't have as much time for other activities as I needed. And I also took up the specialization in
Yeah.
interactive multimedia, which meant I had extra credits on top of the extra SEM abroad. So I eventually dropped the doing judo.
Yeah.
Um, but then I helped my friend MJ Pavia, may he rest in peace, um, set up the Ateneo Frisbee org, where I was sort of a vice president, but not really.
Yeah.
On paper I was, but I wasn't really doing much of anything. I
But you
just
guys were
helped
the
it.
founding members.
yeah, we were the founding members. We got a few signatures to get the whole thing rolling, and I'm happy.
Nice.
My younger brother is currently taken over with it, and it's
Oh,
doing fairly well, naman.
so your
So
younger
I'm
brother is currently enrolled in Ateneo.
yeah, he's fifth year now.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, I'm just happy that it's thriving and stuff like that. So that's about as org as I got.
Yeah.
For the
Yeah.
for the those who are coming into the Ateneo, part of what Ateneo is about. The Ateneo life is about org life, and
Definitely.
I
Yeah.
don't get pressured into doing that if that's
Yeah.
not for you. There's so
Yeah.
many other things
So many other things.
outside being an org
Yeah. Yeah.
person. Yeah.
What did you have your JTA, by the way? So for those of you watching, JTA stands for Junior Term Abroad. It's an opportunity for our students to actually spend the semester in a different university abroad. So where did you go for your junior year?
I was actually in Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, which was surprising because that was a time when that Hong Kong bus fiasco happened.
Okay. Oh, yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Yes, yes.
So we were strongly advised against going there, but I ended up going there because I wanted to see what it was like.
Yeah.
And I was enrolled in the math department of all things. Yeah, but there's a very that experience really impacted how I viewed CS as a whole. But more on that later when we get to expound on that. But yeah, I was in HKUST Hong Kong. It's a nice little university at I think at the northeastern end, very isolated from the city itself. It was on the
Yeah,
side of a mountain, and then
yeah.
you went down. It was the sea already and stuff like
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely for those of you thinking of coming to Ateneo, yeah, we have this nice JTA program. We've got a lot of great partner universities abroad. So, Anto, can you tell us? So, what certain aspects of of your Ateneo education do you think has helped you in your professional career and life in general, actually?
Yeah. So for those who are going to watch this, you've all heard about how the Ateneo is about holistic education and about personal development, and I can tell you that's very much true because as a scientist, what really spurs you on is your curiosity, and then always asking the question, "Can this be done? Is this possible?" But in what I've experienced so far is that my Ateneo education really inserts another question into that thought process, and that is, should this be done? So, as a scientist and an engineer, what I'm looking at is not just if I could do it, if this would be interesting, innovative, but if the innovation will actually mean something to the people it was intended for, or if it is needed in the world today, or if it might be harmful. So um, as much as I sometimes try not to let it seep into my mind, um, because so sometimes you just want to be a scientist and just
Yeah, yeah,
do stuff
yeah,
like really novel stuff. But
yeah,
it really comes back to is like whenever I want to start a project or
yeah,
anything, it's like will it be useful for the society as a whole today.
yeah,
And I guess that's really influenced my career path in terms of like when I was doing my master's, instead of doing a purely theoretical robotics thesis, I ended up doing a applied robotics thesis, as I explained earlier.
yeah,
And then currently in my work, I was into automation in EY, and now also into augmentation in AI Pros. I always find myself asking and prioritizing the fact that the technology I'm developing will not completely replace the people it was intended to help, but always augment them and keep them in the equation. So yeah, it didn't seem like much back
yeah,
then, but all the ethics and philosophical lessons
yeah,
that they really drill into you kind of like get in your head. So it's speaking, so
yeah,
it's gonna be, there's gonna be a voice in there
yeah,
that's telling you, hey, be a cura personalis or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Be a good human being, right?
yeah, be a good
Which is
human being.
which I would say is very important nowadays. Yeah. So yes, in Ateneo we
Yeah,
have a lot of these humanities subjects, philosophy, theology, and things like that. So you ended
yeah,
up enjoying most of the subjects anyway.
yeah. I ended up so I have very strong opinions about the core curriculum,
Yeah,
but in general, I do enjoy, like, especially
yeah,
the philosophy subjects, because
yeah, yeah,
as a computer science student, as a science student, you always
yeah,
end up thinking quantitatively,
yeah,
and the qualitative thinking that the philosopher courses affords you helps you tackle on less numerical thought processes in the future, like business decisions,
yeah,
ethical decisions, and stuff like that,
yeah,
which you can never really separate from the science and the engineering that you're doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your MS in Worcester Polytechnic Institute, right? So how was
Yeah.
the transition like? Because you mentioned so you were a CS major and you were focusing on game dev. Then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, well, not all of a sudden, because your thesis was also kind of related to machines. How was that transition going from computer science with a focus on game dev to something that's robotics related? Because people might think that would be a big jump, but is it really?
No, it's not actually a big jump, because if you
Yeah,
think about it, um, game development is basically you creating a set of rules and you
yeah,
creating agents that
yeah,
obey those set of rules and then make decisions
yeah,
based on some rewards or some objective and
yeah,
following those set of rules. The only
yeah,
difference is in robotics, you don't get to make the set of rules. You obey natural physical constraints or
yeah,
whatever constraints of the problem, and you
yeah,
basically adapt your agent to work
yeah,
with whatever you're constrained with. So it wasn't
yeah,
really a big jump. I would
yeah,
say that the biggest change would be like, oh, I can't freely define the behavior now,
yeah,
but that just changes the approach to the problem. And it's still sort of like, because when I was in game design, I was mostly into game engine design and
okay,
character AI,
yeah,
so it was basically the same thing,
yeah,
um aside from the engineering part,
yeah,
which I didn't really have a background on. So
yeah,
in CS, you don't get a background in um, dynamics, mechanics, and
yeah,
stuff like that. Maybe a
yeah.
broad overview, but it wasn't really a big jump.
And I remember in one of the instances where you spoke when you spoke of this, you were talking about one of the first things that you had to do was to program the collision detection for the robot to make sure that it didn't hit people
Yeah, yeah,
because it was I think you mentioned it was a pretty heavy robot. So if it hit someone, it could actually cause catastrophic injury, right?
yeah, yeah. And it also had it could
Yeah,
move fairly fast. So
yeah,
if for some reason, because it had to remove stuff from your face, right? So if for some reason it misestimates where your face is and just goes swiping like that, you'll end up
yeah,
hurting
yeah,
the person you're trying to help. So
yeah,
yeah. And as you know, game design involves a lot of collision detection, and you would be
yeah,
surprised the fact that the disciplines interlap. A lot of the collision detection that's used in robotics planning is merely an adaptation of what's used in games. Yeah.
yeah. This is also timely because Jess and I are currently teaching the CS freshmen, and I think our collision detection lesson, the very first Java collision detection lesson they'll have, is supposed to be in a couple of weeks. So I think we'll just be preparing some online videos for that. But just super basic stuff like think like two squares moving around the screen, and if they hit each other, they'll
Yeah.
bounce off each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
You know,
they'll get their
an
first hit.
interesting thing would
Yeah,
be like after they manage to get the two squares,
yeah.
have them do a million squares bouncing around.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
'Cause-
We'll make them do that. Yeah,
yeah,
all of these things. Yeah, because can be applied to robotics, as you just said,
yeah,
to actually help save lives.
yep.
So I also wanted to talk about this because I know you lead an active lifestyle. Um,
Hmm.
how do you balance it with your work? Could you tell us about the different activities that you do right now and how you balance them with your current work?
Okay, so I'm I've currently put playing Ultimate Frisbee on hold because I of an injury, but I used to play a lot, like maybe
Yeah,
3 to 4 times a week, and
yeah,
that all started in high school with my math teacher, Mr. Orashon. was like invited us to play a bit of Ultimate, and that like I've been playing for close to 14, 15 years now. And I also hit the gym a lot. That was because of my stint in the US in WPI. So, funny story, I live downhill from the school, and 2 minute walk up, the first building you'll see was the gym. So
Okay.
whenever I was bored, I would just like walk up the gym and started
Yeah.
lifting weights or doing wall climbing or playing
Yeah.
basketball. So for me, it's not really a hard balancing act. Surprise, surprise, because I don't really go out.
Yeah.
I'm more of an introvert, and I don't like do a lot of the things that people usually do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's how I balance most of it. And so far, what I did was I made it a priority because one, I enjoy it, and two, it's actually very
Yeah.
helpful for my body. So
Yeah.
if choosing between like, do I watch Netflix or do I hit the gym or do I play computer games or do I hit the gym, I always end up choosing hitting the
Yeah.
gym.
Yeah.
And then that sort of became like a routine already.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to go do it in order to be more productive.
Yeah.
And so far, it's really helped because being physically fit and active really
Yeah.
helps the thought process and not getting. I don't know. There's a lot of studies on it. Like
Yeah.
you think better, you feel
Yeah.
better when you're healthier. So there,
Yeah. That's true.
it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Were there certain aspects of your education at Ateneo that you think helped you become this person who's able to balance their life more?
Yeah, I would say that throughout the entirety of Ateneo, like the academics itself is also it has just the academics itself is like a juggling act. So you have to
Yeah.
prioritize different things, and they're not necessarily interconnected. Because if like
Yeah.
in another university, so I'll take my experience in HKUST as an example. Students there don't really have any humanities subjects. They usually end up doing double majors and like taking a bunch of science subjects or math subjects or engineering subjects together. And I think it's much easier actually to balance that kind of academic load because each field of study feeds into the other.
Yeah.
So you could easily jump from one focus. So let's say you're doing a physics and a math double major, you
Yeah.
could if you once you're tired of studying for your physics subject, you could easily jump into your math subject, and it's the same train of thought. But in the Ateneo, you can't really approach like, oh, let's say you're studying CS. I was like, I have a history long test, and then you go, it's completely different thought
Yeah.
process. So
Yeah.
you have to learn how to like compartmentalize, shut it down, and keep it stored somewhere in the back of your head, and then
Yeah.
jump to another thing. And I think that's really helped me um, balance my active lifestyle because once I'm really tired of working, I could just like shut that portion out and then keep it logged off,
Yeah.
but not really, and then transition quickly into like hitting the gym mode or like
Yeah.
playing frisbee mode or basketball mode, and then after I'm done with that, I could just go back to whatever I was doing, and the Ateneo has really given me a lot of practice doing that.
It's good to hear. Yeah. And the reason why I ask is because I think, well, of course, I think it's very important to have a balanced lifestyle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think maybe there probably are a lot of people out there who have this notion that just because you are in a computer science related field, that you are automatically a sedentary human being who's just in front of the computer all day.
Yeah.
But really, yeah, it's not the case. Yeah. And
Yeah,
also,
fun fact,
yeah,
one of our founding fathers of
yeah.
computer science, Alan Turing, was
Yeah.
actually an Olympic caliber
Oh yeah,
long
yeah,
distance
yeah,
runner,
yeah, yeah,
and he would usually find time to run close to 10 kilometers
yeah,
every day if he had to, 5 to 10 kilometers. And it's like,
yeah,
well, I always think of like if Turing had the time to do that, and at that time he was like responsible for decoding German
yes,
messages, right, during a
yeah,
war. And if he
yeah,
had the time to like go for a run, then I have the time to
yeah,
go a bit of
yeah,
do a bit of
yeah.
exercise too.
Right.
Yeah,
It's all about focus and yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it's important also to to just break the stereotype, right, of the typical
Mm-hmm.
which I think is good because I do notice nowadays I am seeing like among the students like students with a wide array of interests. We've got in the past few years we're getting also a lot of student athletes in the computer science program as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I just want to put it out there that you know, the when you come to when you come to computer science, when you enroll inside the computer science course here in Ateneo, you will be around students of varying interests,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that's good also. Um, all right, so I think maybe we can move on to your final message or advice to prospective students who are deciding, should I go into Ateneo, should I go into computer science?
Okay, so let's first do the should I go into Ateneo? Yes, you
Oh,
should if you're really a fan of like a more holistic lifestyle. My advice would be just when you're in the Ateneo, not to get too distracted,
yeah,
um, because there's so many options and things to do. You could be doing five different things at the same time, and it's really very hard to juggle something like that and going full effort.
yeah,
You might burn yourself out. So if you do go into the Ateneo, choose your battles carefully. Choose what you focus on carefully. Of course, you have to choose your. That's why you should, when you go into the Ateneo, you should enjoy what your course is. So if you really enjoy computer science, you should really do it because, in a sense, um, don't don't just join a course because you think there's money in it. Um, in the long run, that won't really benefit you. You'll find yourself burning out.
yeah,
And then if you should really take CS if you enjoy problem solving, coding, yeah, you should take CS. But also, when you come from CS, you have to realize that you're not going to be confined to a programming job. I've known a lot of computer science graduates who've gone on to become startup CEOs, project managers, and analysts. So, what you would really get from being in CS is not so much the programming skills, but the logical way of thinking. So, I like to tell some of my brother's friends or people I meet in Ultimate who are on the younger age that if they're considering CS, that a computer scientist is different from a programmer. You're not just a programmer. You're a logician, so to speak. Um, what you do in CS translates to other fields because everything we do in work, in business, in life can be broken down into logical steps. And basically, that's what you would find yourself doing in CS. You're
yeah,
basically taking a very abstracted process and you're just breaking it down into steps which are easily executable with simple instructions. And that kind of way of thinking, that kind of thought process, that kind of ability is very useful wherever you go. So don't just think that just because you're in CS, you're going to be stuck in a chair or programming for the rest of your life.
yeah,
No, not really.
yeah,
And also, one bit of advice then, um, we always see computer science students going into CS and they don't like doing the math. Um, please do the math.
yeah,
When you're in CS, you can't really separate math from computer science, and
yeah,
I found that out during my stint in HKUST.
yeah,
That a lot of the things we do in CS is really grounded in mathematical theories,
yeah,
and just because when you're in CS, you can't say that um, okay, I'm gonna do this, but I'm totally gonna ignore the math for it because you're ultimately constrained in your processes by the mathematical
yeah,
theories behind what we're doing. So please do the math.
yeah,
You don't have to be very good at it. You just have to to know
yeah,
what it's all about. So there.
yeah. Give math a chance, everyone.
Yeah, give math a chance,
Yeah,
and the less you think about it as like this weird set of rules and numbers, and more of this like a natural language which governs
yeah,
physical and logical interactions, then the more you'd actually appreciate
yeah,
it for
yeah.
what it is.
And I find really that you sort of like have to apply this grit, to try to figure out how math is, and eventually it usually pays off. Like you will have this aha moment, and you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
that's what I've been trying to figure out for for the
yeah,
past few days or weeks. Yeah,
yeah, because
yeah,
you were talking about grit, and yeah, you just
yeah,
with mathematical problems, you just keep at it because there's
yeah,
no really magical way.
yeah,
There's no magic in it that
yeah,
people who do it just
yeah,
arrive at a
yeah,
decision. maybe if you're really into the theoretical side, but you're not really going to be into that. And a
Yeah.
lot of the times, it's just the rigor of going
Yeah.
through all the equations
Yeah.
will land you where you need to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. This is a
And
good
that's
skill
also
to
good
develop.
practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good skill to develop.
For anything, right?
Yeah,
Not just math. Yeah. All
yeah.
right. So thank you so much. I'm sure a lot of the prospective students who are gonna watch this would have learned a lot, and we appreciate really you sitting with me today to share your experience. So Anto, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me also, and I hope I'm helpful to you guys.
Definitely.
And may he see you in the Ateneo next year.
Yeah, yeah. I hope to see you guys, whoever's
Okay.
watching. I hope to see a large, an even larger batch of students because now we've got. I don't know if you've heard, but we've got 4 blocks of CS
Yeah.
already. Used to be just 1 or 2 every year, right?
Yeah, we had 2, and by the
Yeah.
time we graduated, it was more of like 1 2/3 or 1 1/2.
So yeah, thanks again, and have a nice day. Yeah.
You too. Thank you.
And then,
Stay
hope to
healthy
see
and safe, everyone.
you as well. Okay, bye, Anto.
Bye.